Hi, Stephan Kesting from grapplearts.com. This morning, I sent out a quick little snap about training early in the morning, training at 5 or 6 in the morning and being all hardcore, and quite frankly, why that didn't work for me. But that got me thinking about the larger topic of training and finding time to train when you're super duper crazy busy with life, but you still enjoy training. So that's what we're going to talk about, because I feel like I'm a little bit of an expert on the topic, and I know there are other people who are in the same boat. But you know what? I live in the Pacific Northwest. There's been like 28 days of rain in the last month. Today's the first day that it's not pouring in forever. So let's head outside and let's do this outside and, take advantage of the little bit of pseudo sunshine that there is. Okay, so how to train, how to get better at Jiu-Jitsu or martial arts when you have absolutely no time. So, like I said, I think I'm a little bit of an expert at this. I'm going to make this a very personal session. For example, I am a full-time firefighter. I run what's essentially a full-time business. I'm a single dad, and up until September this year, I was also homeschooling half-time 2 kids. So that's a pretty full plate. Oh, by the way, at the same time, I'm also trying to get better at Jiu-Jitsu. I want to keep on training, and I want to keep on improving, and I want to keep on learning, and I want to keep on sharing. So that's a very, very full plate. How on earth does one do that many things? So this is something that I've struggled with, and over the time, I've come up with some different answers. We all have 168 hours in a week. There are only 168 hours in a week, and let's say that we're sleeping and brushing our teeth and stuff like that for 8 hours a day, which is pretty good, and not all of us make it. So 8 hours a day for 7 days a week, that's 56 hours in a week. 168 hours, it leaves us a little bit over 100 hours a time. So now we're working. Say we're working 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week. This still leaves us with about 50 or 60 hours in a week. And frankly, most people, I think, completely squander that time. Look at all the talk that happens at the office about what happened last night on Dancing with the Stars, or can you believe what happened in Westworld, or the latest episode of Game of Thrones. I mean, Game of Thrones, special place in my heart. It's the one thing a year that I make time for in my television watching. I do spend 10 hours, because there are 10 episodes a year, so 10 hours a year are spoken for. So for 1 week, I don't have 168 hours, I have 158 hours. Other than that, I basically don't do television. I used to say, throw out your TV, it'll be the best thing that you'll ever have done. Now I say, cancel your Netflix subscription. Cancel your fucking Netflix, and right away, you'll have freed up a whole bunch more hours in the day. One thing people sometimes try and do to free up more hours in a day is to cut back on sleep. And yeah, we all do this to some extent. I don't know very many people who are getting their 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day, because the research shows that for high-level athletic performance, that 10 hours a day is often what you need. I think it was forget who it was. There was some triathlete who won the Hawaii Ironman at a relatively old age. And he basically said his schedule was get up, train, sleep, go and train some more, go and sleep some more. It was basically 12 hours a day of sleeping, because it's a way to recover. So when you start cutting down on your sleep, you really start cutting into your ability to recover. I said it's going to be personal, so let me talk a personal story. 2005, 2006, I got invited to the Abu Dhabi trials. This was going to be cool. Except, how on earth was I going to train for this? I had a couple real small kids at home, and I was very, very, very busy. So how was I going to train? I know I'll train from 5 to 7 in the morning, then I can still go to work after that. All I need to do is sleep less, and I can find some other idiots who are willing to get up and train with me that early in the morning. And that way, so I'll train early in the morning, I'll go to work, maybe I'll train after. So I'll either train once or twice a day, squeeze in some conditioning. That should be good enough, right? Well, it worked at first, but then within 3 or 4 weeks of doing this, I got the worst injury that I've ever received. Well, one of the worst injuries I've ever received. Maybe it was just because it was cold. I was cold, I wasn't fully warmed up yet, but mostly it was because I was overtrained and under-rested. I got this horrendous pinched nerve in my neck, right? I was fighting my way out of a kezigatami, a headlock type position, and it was a judo guy. And I pinched the nerve in the neck, and for the next 6 months, it felt like somebody was jabbing a knife, Halloween style, into my shoulder blade. It was horrendous. I tried everything to fix this, from chiropractic, which made it worse, to ice, which didn't help, to acupuncture, which didn't help. And I basically watched the Abu Dhabi trials plan evaporate because there was just no way that I could recover from that. So overtraining is two things. Overtraining is training too much, but it's also resting too little. If you don't sleep enough, if you don't physically sleep and rest enough to allow your body to recover from all that training, there's no way you're going to get better. You're going to keep on going down, and you'll eventually, as sure as night follows day, you're going to come down and you're either going to get sick or you're going to get injured. I remember doing an interview with Marcio Feitosa a long time ago, and he said something like, sleep is the first part of training. If you don't sleep, then you cannot get better at training unless you're taking tons of chemicals or drugs or steroids. And it's true. Like, there are some people who make it through life by snorting enough coke, by taking enough meth, because they're different. They're the ones who can actually handle it. They're not going to get addicted, and they'll know when to quit. Or just drink 12 cups of coffee a day. So I can't really speak to that. Fortunately, I've managed to kick the meth habit. So unless you're powering yourself through your day with ridiculous quantities of stimulants, which are gonna take their toll, for sure, you don't get something for nothing, you basically have to wrap your head around getting enough sleep. So it's not as simple as making more time by simply not sleeping. All right, so what do? You're super busy. You gotta sleep. We've learned this, and lessons repeat themselves till learned. You'll eventually learn this if you don't believe me. What are we gonna do? There's sort of three general categories of things that you can do. Number one is make time. I would include, throwing out your Netflix subscription there, making time. Magically, all of a sudden, you've got 3 more hours a day or 4 more hours a week or whatever it is. But those 4 more hours, that could make the difference between getting your blue belt, getting your purple belt, getting your brown belt, getting your black belt, as opposed to that being some distant dream that you're never actually going to realize. Another thing you can do to make more time is to train at times that there aren't officially classes at. If you can go and train with a friend, train at a club or train at a different club or train in a home gym, if you can get a few mats, then you might be able to squeeze in another 45-minute workout at a time when there aren't formal classes. But you can still train, you can still get better. I mean, my first home gym was 9 of those like half-inch thick, rock-hard puzzle mats. That was it. If you did throwing work on them or takedowns on them, you were dead. Something would break. But it was enough to roll, it was enough to do a little bit of drilling, and I had them down in my kitchen. Literally, I broke some kitchen cupboard doors. You're trying to do some kind of half-guard sweep. But it was better than nothing, because the alternative was not training at those times. Doing something is always better than doing nothing. So if you can put together a little home gym, 9 puzzle mats, it's $100 or a couple $100. Now, after doing martial arts for 35 years, I now finally have the home gym that I've always wanted. It's a beautiful 20-foot by 20-foot tatami mats on the floor, nice wrestling mats on the walls, beautiful lighting. It is the home gym I've always wanted, and I only had to wait 35 years to get it. Hopefully you can get it a little bit fast, but for me, with my busy life, that's a lifesaver, because I can have people come to me. I'm fortunate enough that, if I want to train, usually I can find somebody who's willing to make the journey to me. They may have more time, they may not have the facilities. I've got the facilities, I don't have the time, so we're kind of trading there. I might help them with whatever it is that they're working on, and in exchange, they'll let me use their body for drilling or for training, for sparring, or whatever it is that I need to do that day. Sort of on a related note, some people think that the answer is a training dummy. And I'm going to say from personal experience that most of the time, this is a terrible idea. It's a giant waste of time, money, effort, and space. 99% of the training dummies that are bought out there never end up getting used after the initial flush of enthusiasm for the first couple of weeks. People go, they have the best of intentions, they map out their training plans. I'm going to do 100 arm bars from the guard, then I'm going to flip around to 100 arm bars from mount every single day. Even though it's on a training dummy, it's got to be better than not training at all, right? Well, maybe. I know that I've built 2 or 3 training dummies, no, 3 or 4 training dummies. I've very seriously considered ordering them. I've used friends' training dummies, and basically every single time I've ended throwing them out, not using it, and not sticking with it. And I'm pretty motivated. But for me, it doesn't work. For most people, it doesn't work. For about 1 or 2% of people, it does work. It's a great way for people to get the reps in. And if you're one of those 1 or 2%, then, get some dummies, get like 4 puzzle mats, and put it in the corner of your room. And good luck explaining to the girl who's coming over to your apartment for the first time why you've got a life-size mannequin there. Tell them it's for jiu-jitsu. They will not believe you. And that's just life as a jiu-jitsu player. So the first general approach to training when you have no time to train is to train at odd hours, to make ways to open up training times, right? Train at home, train at other clubs, throw out Netflix. The second category of ideas is to make your training more efficient and more effective. Let's say you can only go to 2 classes a week. That's all you could do. You'd love to go 4 or 5 times, but all you can do is go twice. Now, the reality is that even the guys who go 5 times a week wish they could do 10 times a week, right? That's usually, the eagerness to train usually exceeds the ability to do it in every case. But let's say you'd like to train 4 or 5 times a week, but you can only train twice a week. What are you going to do? Well, let's get the most that we can out of those 2 hours. Let's not go in there and bullshit about the UFC and gossip about what this instructor said about that instructor. No, stay focused. Hello, you're there to do a job. You've got 2 hours. Let's make every minute of those 2 hours count. So let's do some drilling. If everyone's hanging out, chit-chatting, grab a guy, say, hey, I've been thinking about this X-guard position. Can we just go and do some reps back and forth? Probably the guy will say yes. And if he doesn't say yes, find the next guy and do it with him. Incidentally, this is why I'm not a big fan of those jiu-jitsu classes that start with an endless long warm-up. Running around in circles, skipping in place, endless break falls, endless shrimping. For me, that's a lot of filler. Back when I was in my 20s, even in my early 30s, when I had way more time, okay, that was just a price to pay. I was getting some conditioning benefit out of it. But now that now that I am so incredibly busy, I think it's a lot of filler, quite honestly. And I would far rather spend my time when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, when I actually finally manage to make it to a mat with a training partner, to focus on doing jiu-jitsu. I can do my conditioning, I can do my running, I can do my push-ups, I can do all that stuff later. And I've got enough self-discipline to do all that additional conditioning later. I suppose a lot of teachers think that their students won't do any of that if they don't make them do it. So anyhow, that's a side rant. You may not have control over that. I do. Nowadays, I basically refuse to go to a class that's 2/3 warm-up, where you're endlessly doing jumping jacks and forward somersaults and backward somersaults and backward somersaults into handstands. Man, I can do my own conditioning, and I do my own conditioning, thank you very much. If I actually manage to make it to a class where there are mats and people, I want to be on those mats working with those people. So that's an advantage that I have that you may not have. But maybe you can pick and choose which classes you go to, which schools you train at, when your time is limited. Let's just talk a little bit more about making your time in training super efficient and super effective so that you get absolutely the most out of it. A lot of it comes down to sustaining mental focus. How many times do you see people do, they get shown a new technique and they do a couple of reps, and before you know it, they're off, they're exploring some different form. Hey, there's a lot like this other technique. Hey, I saw this cool technique on YouTube. And before you know it, they're off. They're not doing the technique anymore. Stay focused, right? Mental attention, if you can bring focus to an activity, it makes it so much more valuable. 10 minutes of focused training is better than half an hour or 60 minutes of just screwing around and not paying attention. Really focus. Not only do the move with your body, but do it with your mind. Really think it through. I am grabbing here. I am moving my foot there. I am twisting my body about 45 degrees here. If you focus with your mind, as well as going through the motions with your body, you'll get so much more out of it. Well, it started raining again. Oh well, let's keep going. If you live in the Pacific Northwest and you call things off just because it started raining, then you're never going to get anything done ever, because it's just a way of life around here. So, where were we? We were talking about how you can make the training time that you do have more efficient. And here's where I'm going to jump back to one of my major hobby horses, which is cardio. Let's say you can go to an hour and a half class twice a week. So if by the halfway mark, if at 45 minutes you're exhausted, at that point your brain is pretty much not absorbing any more information. And so for one, you're not taking any more information in, and for two, you're not managing to train as effectively. Let's say that you're focusing on the frame and hip escape method of guard retention. This is your stated goal for this class or this week or this month. But if you're tired by the 45-minute mark, you're just not going to you're not going to get as many reps in, essentially, because you're going to try and do it, and the guy's going to blow past your guard, and then you're going to spend the next 10 minutes of the match or 5 minutes of the match suffering under side control. Whereas if your cardio is good, then you can keep the mental attention on what it is that you're doing. No, I'm going to sit up. No, I'm going to frame. No, I'm going to escape my bloody hips further than I think I need to. I'm going to put the guy back into my guard. Same thing applies for anything. If you're hunting for kimuras at your training session, or you're working on side mount defenses, same thing. You need to stay focused on that. And if you're tired, you're not going to stay focused. You're not going to get as much out of your training session. So ironically, if you have limited time to train, let's put it the other way. If you have all the time to train in the world, you can train twice a day, 5 days a week. Your cardio is probably not going to be a problem, because you're going to get it all through rolling. But let's say you can only train twice a week. Instead of 10 times a week, you can only train twice a week. So how do you make that more effective? Well, if you come into it not in horrendous shape, you're going to get way more out of those 2 classes that you can get, as opposed to if you're huffing and puffing after the warm-up. So I'll ask you, do you work in a place that has elevators? Do you take the elevator, or do you take the stairs? Do you always take the stairs? Do you find some time to go for a run? Even a little bit of cardio, even 20 minutes twice a week, even once a week, is so much better than not doing any. On Grapple Arts, I've got a couple of articles that talk about exactly what to do, how to get in shape and how to stay in shape when training time is really super limited. One of them is called Fitness on 1 hour a week of working out. That was my answer to somebody who said, basically, look, I got no time at all to stay fit. I think I can devote one of my 168 hours a week to working out. What do you suggest that I do? And I answered it. Another is an article that I basically stole from John Hackelman from The Pit, which is 11 workouts that average 11 minutes each. So if you can do 2 11-minute workouts in a week, 22 minutes a week, there are 168 hours in a week. Can you work out for 22 minutes of them? You'll be way further ahead if you do, when you do make it to class and you finally do manage to train with a real life person on a real life mat with a real life instructor yelling at you to shrimp, move your hips, move your hips. All right, so we've talked about how to essentially add more hours to your week. We've talked about making the training time that you do have more efficient and more effective. The third pillar of sorts, I mean, there's a ton of overlap here, is to use your non-training time to still develop your skills. You could, for example, put that taking the stairs instead of the escalator or the elevator into this, but I'm more here talking about training your mind. Just because you're not at jiu-jitsu class, just because you're not on the mat, doesn't mean that you can't keep on getting better. Doesn't mean that your mirror neurons can't be firing as you're watching somebody armbar somebody else. I really like, my personal bias here, are instructionals. I really like watching jiu-jitsu instructionals. I get a lot out of them. That's probably why I've ended up producing so many, because I've derived so much benefit from watching other people's instructionals that I make a lot of my own instructionals. Whether those are on DVD, yes, people still watch DVDs. I can't believe it. I'm predicting the demise of DVDs for 5 years, but they're still there. People are still buying them. Or now in app form, there's a lot of instructional apps, or even downloadable video products. Basically, if you can take somebody's experience, if somebody spends 3 years working on armbar setups, and they make an instructional, and they're even 30% effective at encapsulating what they know in their video product, then you've just received about a year of instruction there. You've received an acceleration of knowledge there of about 1 year. That's pretty incredible when you think of that. For $100 or $50 or $200, you can get essentially a year's worth of training knowledge inserted into your brain. I mean, this is something that we now almost take for granted, that martial artists in the past never, ever, ever had access to. It applies to anything. I mean, if you wanted to become a world expert, I don't know, deer skull painter, you'd go and you'd watch a bunch of YouTube videos on painting deer skulls. You'd buy some dude's program on how to paint skulls for pleasure and profit. And within 6 months, if you did it enough, if you actually thought about it enough, researched enough, and actually practiced it enough, you would be the deer skull painting expert. That's a pretty big digression, but the same could apply to triangle chokes. The same can apply to butterfly guard sweeps. The same thing can apply to passing the close guard. It's all out there. You can watch it on the bus. You can listen to it in some cases as you're driving. Don't watch it while you're driving. You can watch it on your lunch break. You can watch it on the plane. It'll still go into your brain. Yes, even though you're not physically doing it, just watching it is a huge advantage sometimes. I mean, of course you need to eventually put it into action and actually physically do it. But there's a huge value to watching it. Related is the whole idea of watching competition. Watching the very best people in the world do something. There's so many people out there who've done breakdowns of, Marcelo Garcia's single leg X guard in action. And for the next 10 minutes, you can watch Marcelo Garcia hit single leg X after single leg X after single leg X. Or Ben Askren's wrestling takedown finishes. And again, you can have the benefit of somebody else having taken all that knowledge and compiled it and put it together in a compilation. And just by watching the high-level guys do something again and again and again, you can derive a huge amount of benefit. And if you can't train as often as you would like, then I would suggest that you still watch video as often as you can. Another potential way of learning when you're not actually on the mat training is reading books. There are some really good jiu-jitsu books out there that show techniques, and some people learn better by looking at pictures and reading the descriptions than they do from learning videos. If you're that kind of learner, then you should start accumulating a library of jiu-jitsu books. Unfortunately, some of the better publishers have gone out of business. Apparently, there's not a lot of money in making jiu-jitsu books, but you can still get them secondhand. You can still order some of them, and if you can get your hands on them, they can be really useful for certain kinds of learners. The final thing that you can do to train when you're not actually training is to train your mind. That means to visualize and to mentally problem solve. By visualization, it means you are imagining doing a specific technique on a specific person. I'm going to give the person my elbow. They're going to grab my elbow. I'm going to strip the grip. I'm going to grab over the shoulder. I'm going to go for the throw. Where does my foot go? Where does my hand go? Where does my head go? How does it feel? Try and imagine how it feels. Try and imagine how it looks. Try and imagine, the steps of doing it. Another related topic is sort of the creative problem solving in your mind. Man, every time I get stuck in this position here, I'll pick an example out of my head. When I've got the omoplata on somebody and they've got the omoplata on me and we're in that reciprocal position, what could I do? And going through it mentally, well, can I move my foot over his head? Can I free my grip using my knee? Can I stand up and shake him off? Bottom line is, you're still thinking about jiu-jitsu. And if you're thinking about jiu-jitsu, you'll have stuff to work on the next time you get on the mat, but your mind's not going stale. You're still in the game. You're still doing something. So you can make the class a couple times a week. If you can spend some time thinking about jiu-jitsu, visualizing jiu-jitsu, if you can sneak in 22 minutes a week of cardio, you'll be in a way better place than if you just go, oh man, I can't train at all. I can't do, the 5 hours or the 5 sessions a week that I want to do, so I shouldn't do it at all. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't make it an all or nothing proposition. We come back to one of my very favorite sayings, which is having something is better than having nothing. There is value to training. If you, for a while, you've got a new child in the house, twins, let's make it twins. Your wife just had twins and she's having a hard time recovering from her pregnancy. Or you are the wife and you like to train and now you're having a hard time recovering from that pregnancy. Do the best you can. Doing something is better than doing nothing. Training once a week and going for a walk is better than not training once a week and not going for that walk. It'll keep your head in the game. It'll keep you active in the sport. It'll keep the desire going. And don't worry, jiu-jitsu will be there for you when you're ready to come back. Just because you can't make it to as many classes as you'd like, just because you can't do what you want to do, don't give up hope. Life changes. Eventually that big contract that you're working on will be finished. Eventually your medical school internship will be done. Eventually those twins will grow up. Eventually your wife will start feeling better or you'll get divorced. Time will come back to you if it's a priority, and jiu-jitsu will be there waiting for you, and hopefully you will be ready to get back to training as often as you like. So that's pretty much the end of this particular rant. What I'm going to do now is just throw on the Snapchat video that I filmed this morning that got me thinking about this topic. That Snapchat video was much more limited in scope. It was spontaneous, and it was mostly talking about this idea of training early in the morning, being super hardcore, which some people can pull off. I don't mean to denigrate that. If you're one of these people who doesn't need to sleep, if you only need to sleep 5 hours a night, you've got a huge advantage over me. Bloody use it. If you're one of these people who feels absolutely the best in the morning, you wake up and you're 5 in the morning, you like to always go for a run and go lift, perfect, go train. It doesn't apply to everybody. You just have to know yourself. You have to learn what works for you. You have to learn what works for your body. Another one of my favorite sayings is that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So after you injure yourself enough times doing stuff that doesn't work for you, you'll figure out what does. Take care and have a great day. All right, so it's early. There's dawn's early light over there somewhere. And I'm heading out, but this got me thinking about training early in the morning. Now, I know a lot of guys who are really busy, like professionals, who train at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, before work. And I've done it too. When I was getting ready for the Abu Dhabi trials, I was super busy, small kids in the house, and I was getting up at 5 in the morning to train. Trouble is, that resulted in the worst joint injury I ever had. I pinched a nerve in my neck, and for the next half year, it felt like someone was stabbing me with a knife. I think the reason I got injured is because of one of two things. Either I wasn't warmed up enough, right? You're cold in the morning, you're stiff, you really got to warm up. And the other reason is that I was probably hugely overtrained, which really means underrested and underslept. By getting up that early, I was just not sleeping enough.
So ultimately, it really comes down to knowing your own body. If you train hard early in the morning, does it make you feel better? Does it make you feel worse? You got to figure it out.